Finance.
Hey, welcome to the Financial Independence Podcast, the podcast where I interview people on the path to financial independence to find out their strategies and tactics for getting there even quicker. Today, I'm excited to introduce Ed Mills from Millionaire Educator.com. Ed and his wife are both teachers, and they amassed nearly $1 million over the course of just 15 short years teaching. So I know a lot of people out there think, you can't get ahead on a teacher's salary, but Ed and his wife just blow that myth out of the water. He's done some really interesting things to hit that number. He's a big proponent of front-loading retirement accounts. I think this year, actually, him and his wife are planning to contribute over $100,000 between them to tax-advantaged accounts. He's also one of the only guys I know that's done a SEPP 72T distribution, so I'm excited to talk to him about that to see how much of a pain that is, because that's one strategy to get access to retirement accounts prior to standard retirement age. So I'm looking forward to talking to him about that. He's also moved around quite a bit to increase his income. And I know I talk a lot about geographic arbitrage in an international sense. Having just come back from Thailand, I understand how beneficial it could be to move somewhere where the cost of living is a lot lower. But a lot of people email me and say, well, I don't want to leave the States, or I don't want to leave Canada, or wherever you're reading from. So Ed actually did quite a bit of domestic geographic arbitrage, and he used his moves to really ramp up his income and ramp up his savings rate. So a lot of good stuff I'm excited to talk to him about. So without further delay, Ed, welcome. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks for having me on. I'm honored.
All right. So my audience may not, know too much about your backstory. So, how'd you get on this journey to financial independence, and maybe, start back at the beginning of your teaching career and just give us an idea of how that went and how you got to where you are today?
Well, let me go back a little further and just say, I'll be honest. I was a jock. I was a basketball player, and I went off to college on an athletic scholarship.
Yeah, you're a D1 player, right?
Yeah, I was D1, and
cool.
it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, and you're always on a schedule. And so then I played after college. I played a year in Argentina and a year in El Salvador, and in between that time, I got more free time and got to explore other interests. And I ended up in language school in Guatemala, and I actually did a month in Rio de Janeiro learning. And strange twist of fate, I became a Spanish teacher in spite of the fact that I could barely pass Spanish in college. I think I made 3 C's. But, when you have a college degree and you can speak Spanish, there's a lot of interest in finding Spanish teachers, particularly in Georgia in the late 80s. So I became a Spanish teacher after being recommended by a teacher who was leaving, and they wanted me to replace her, and I took the job. In all honesty, I took my first real teaching job at age 27. Up to that point, like I said, I played basketball and I was traveling, and I would go to school and pick up Spanish courses at, say, Georgia State or Kennesaw, and knowing that at some point I wanted to teach, at least I thought I did. And 27, got my first real job. Worked at a few years, and it wasn't really great money. I think I made $18,000 my first year, and that's what you made in Georgia back then. And wasn't sure what to do, so what do you do when you don't know what to do? You go to grad school, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And at age 31, I went off to grad school, and I got an MBA out in Laredo, Texas, and I got a master's for Spanish and ESL education at Southern Miss. I made 33 when I graduate. I got a $20,000 student loan. My wife also has a $20,000 student loan, so we're in the hole for 40. And about that time, I got a little nibble about a job in Saudi Arabia, and I took it. And I think I made $40,000 tax-free dollars a year, and I had an apartment and a use of a car. So I got those checks, and I was sending whole checks in on my student loan. I got our net worth up to 0 at age 35. So, 35 is not young. It's not real old, but as opposed to many guys that I read in the financial blogosphere, the financial independence and extreme early retirement, You guys seem so young and so clued in. I was the antithesis of that. I was the free spirit. I was like a drug-free hippie. Yeah, I just like to have fun. I could always find the party, and I just didn't worry about tomorrow. And, well, tomorrow got there, and it was 35, and I was at zero at least.
Yeah, that's a lot better than a lot of people at 35, I think. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel, I thought I was an absolute failure at the time, but I realized I could have really dug myself into a hole with more debt, which is what a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize how pretty I was sitting. I worked a few more years in Saudi. I think it was 38 when I left after 9/11, and at that point, I think our net worth was about $100,000, maybe $110,000. And we started teaching in Georgia. I was really surprised when I got back to the States. It was 2002, started teaching, and I think the first year I made $54,000. Okay. And I think my last year was 25, 26. And my wife was also, we took a job because our plan was to go overseas on the international school circuit and earn the tax-free money. Mm-hmm. But I think the first year together we made $85,000, and I thought, wow, teaching's really pays a lot more here in the state of Georgia since I last taught here.
Now, is that rare for Georgia? Is Georgia particularly good as far as income is concerned, or is that?
In the South, yes, Georgia is one of the higher paying states. And I forget when that salary move took place. Sometime in the late 90s, I believe. I forget who the governor was. I was in Saudi at the time. I was kind of disconnected. But, I know a lot of people from other southern states will try to teach in Georgia because there is more money.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And that just happened to be where your family was from?
Right. I grew up in North Georgia. My wife's from South Georgia. And we ended up splitting the difference. LaGrange, Georgia is where we lived. It was 3 hours from both of our hometowns. Mm-hmm. And, so we're thinking, well, I want to save some money for my retirement. We knew about an IRA, and then, I had a 401k when I was overseas through my U.S. employer that had a contract in Saudi, but that's another story. But anyway, I learned about a 403b, and that's, okay, we have 403b. So I basically started investing with a 403b, and right off the bat, since I already had money, I maxed it out for me. I also did it for my wife, and funded our IRAs. So, some of your articles about front loading, yeah, we would start the year out January, February every year and just do whole checks, like the whole check into our 403b.
Nice.
Yeah, so then, whatever's left, you divide it by 10 and you have a smooth, check the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. So we always did that with our 403b and our IRAs. We loaded them up as soon as we could.
So this was starting at age, like 37? Did you get back from Saudi Arabia?
Well, let's see, my first year teaching back here, I was 38. My wife was 36.
Okay.
So we, like I said, we're a little older at this point, and net worth of 110. Mm-hmm. Saving hard though, but you keep in mind, we're just going to jump ship and go teach at the, the American School of Rio de Janeiro or something. Well, we went to a job fair and we didn't really like the opportunities that we saw. And we went back to our old schools and stayed another year. And 2 years turned into SEPP. During that whole time, we were saving, front loading, as you would say. Mm-hmm. Our salaries. And along the way, somewhere about third or fourth year, I learned of the 457 that we had in our district, and I funded that quite a bit also. Some years I would fully fund it. Some years I'd just, take it down to a threshold where it would benefit me on my taxes.
Mm-hmm. Right. So but before we continue, I'll just, for those out there that may not know, like a 403B is pretty much like the nonprofits version of a 401k. So it's a pre-tax account in the similar fashion that you put in pre-tax money, and it grows tax-free, and then you're taxed on it when you pull it out. The 457 is similar, but there's no early withdrawal fee, and it is such a nice account to have that I thought I had access to it at my job, but then for some reason there's an income requirement for my employer, and I didn't make enough to contribute to it, and I was devastated. But
I would be devastated too.
So a 457 is like a 401k or a 403b, except there's no early withdrawal penalty, which is really nice for people planning on retiring early or,
Correct.
So sorry.
And so, I'm trying to think when I first funded that, I believe the maximums were $15,000 on the 403B and the 457. So, right there, I could put away $30,000 and my wife could do the same. So we were really able to accelerate our savings. And, I just remember talking to my wife. I was like, I can't believe that we're able to save this much money. And, my wife's got an MBA too, but she doesn't think about money all the time like I do. She's very frugal, but the wheels get turned on me and you can't shut me up. But anyway, I would see her, I'd show her, I'd make spreadsheets and put it on the refrigerator and I'd say, honey, this is crazy. We're supposedly teachers. We don't make any money, but look at this. The bottom line's growing, and we bought a house, a beautiful house in LaGrange. And, in my mind, I always thought teachers just don't have any money. And then I was experiencing a different reality.
Right. So you're both saving roughly $30K each a year, and you're making how much at this point?
I guess after my wife got her full-fledged certification, we were over probably about 100.
Right. Okay. So
between us,
so a nice 60% plus savings rate. Well, even after tax, even better. So
I have a list here of like my contributions from like 2003 started at $30,000 a year, and by 2007 we're up to $62,000 a year.
Wow.
Put in, and it's between us. All these numbers are my wife and I. We're a team, and so when you see those numbers, it's two people, it's not one.
Right.
But
that's still
we live together.
Exactly. So So at this point, you're up to 60 plus, and you just can't believe your luck with all of it coming in.
Our wealth. I say these numbers not to brag, but just to give people an illustration. I guess around 2008, we're almost $400,000 in net worth. From 2002 to 2008, like 6 years. So, about 6 years of work. And I'm thinking, wow, since I'm not a millionaire or I'm not a trust fund baby, that's real money to me. Mm-hmm. But about that time, about 2008, 2009, we all jobs, you get in a rut, you need a break, and it was time for a change. And so I figured, well, I know these accounts and I know how to use them. And then I realized, wow, I've got money in a 457 that I could use for current expenses.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so basically what we decided to do is like max that 457 out at this job and then take other jobs. So we got our 457 up to $90,000. And then at the end of 2009 school year, we interviewed, took new jobs down in deep South Georgia, Eccles County, a very rural county, not too far from the Okefenokee Swamp. Had a great time. Went down there, lived had a very frugal lifestyle, and we every account we funded fully. And those 3 years down there from 2009 to 2012, we saved $250,000.
Wow.
On teacher salaries. And that was pretty much the plan. I made a spreadsheet once again and showed my wife. She said, "Let's do it."
That's incredible. So this is definitely something I want to focus more on because I've written a lot about geographic arbitrage and earning money in dollars and then spending it somewhere cheaper and making your dollar go further. And a lot of people email me and they say, "Well, what if I don't want to leave America? I like America. I don't want to go live in some tropical place in Southeast Asia or something. What if I want to stay here?" And that seems to be what you did with this move. You went down there, presumably kept similar salaries, and yet you lowered your cost of living dramatically and really just ramped up your savings to an extreme level. Is that correct?
That's pretty much right. We didn't really have a super costly lifestyle in LaGrange, but we had, the mortgage and all, and we were able to rent that out. But, rural Georgia, there's not a lot of distractions. There was no clubbing or there's not a bar scene or places to go where you're going to spend your money. We lived basically in a rural house, $750 a month. We cooked most of our own groceries. We just lived a very frugal lifestyle, but it was very enjoyable. It was a great 3 years. And one of the things that really helped is that district did not have Social Security taken out of the check. There are still a lot of districts in America where if the municipality voted not to participate, they were allowed not to.
Wow.
So not only did I not have to pay it, there was a retirement plan in lieu of Social Security that was 6% of my salary put in there that was 100% vested to me.
Wow.
So, that added, that $250 I cited, that $20,000 from that plan after 3 years. So, and you were talking about geo-arbitrage. I read Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Work Week, and, that really jumped off the pages to me. And like most people, I always viewed geo-arbitrage as a country-to-country situation. And now I realize it can be, county to county, state to state.
Right.
I've got my eye on getting a piece of property in Florida and establish some residency there just for, asset protections and no state income tax and access to Florida virtual school for my son in the future. There's a lot of shifting around or a lot of benefit to maybe moving.
Absolutely. And that's something that I know your story and that we'll obviously be touching on a lot more of it, but that seems to be a recurring theme. You've had no problems just picking up and moving to take advantage of much better opportunities elsewhere, starting from Saudi Arabia to then moving counties in Georgia. And it just seems like it's made such a difference to what's happened to you over the last couple of decades. Do you think that's because you were so comfortable moving as you're a basketball player and that led into, not feeling as tied down to a certain place, or what do you think it attributed to?
Well, it's funny. Being a basketball player in college, I didn't get to have a junior year abroad like all my buddies. They did Spain and Italy and Austria, and I didn't get to do that. Now, don't cry for me because I got to see a lot of America playing in tournaments and whatnot. But I view moving and traveling, it's an adventure to me. And even within the state of Georgia, I'm not from South Georgia originally. Moving to these towns and spending a year or two is an experience to me because it's a different way of life from even where I'm from in North Georgia. Mm-hmm. So I've always had a sense of adventure and being curious. That's just innate in me. And I just kind of view this as my late junior year abroad in a sense. We always refer to our 3 years in Eccles like, the year in Provence. That was just it was rural southern Georgia. It was fun, Mm-hmm. We have great memories of that place, and we'll probably have good memories of this place too when we end up leaving. And, that said, even if I like somewhere, I know I'm going to leave it eventually because, what I do with my money, it requires me to leave.
Right. So, let's talk about that a little bit. So you not only use it to improve your income and reduce your spending in the future, but you also make these moves to improve your investment options. So would you mind talking a little bit about that? Yeah.
Let's say like in my last job in Eccles County, South Georgia, I have this growing amount of money, which to me is a lot, say $200,000 sitting there, and it's in a variable annuity product, with high fees. And I'm not going to invest in a variable annuity product because it's got fee certainty, mm-hmm. And I don't want a 2% a year fee in addition to market uncertainty.
Exactly.
Call me chicken. I'm just not going to do it. So at some point, I need to move that money to, say, my Vanguard IRA where I can control the cost. So, when that pot gets big enough, and we decide, well, look, it's time to take a different job or maybe take a year off so we can, what they call in the business, separate service. That's what, so I can move my money. You have to quit your job to move your money. That's the cruel reality. You can be in a great job, but if you want to move your money, you have to make a hard choice. You're going to have to leave or just keep whatever vehicle you have. And I haven't really talked about this a lot, but most of the 403B products I see at the K-12 level are terrible. They have very high expenses, and I'm just not going to do that.
Mm-hmm. And when you leave, you can move it to anywhere you want for
correct
a Vanguard fund with very, very low fees or wherever you choose.
And I mentioned, 2 basis points or 2 percentage points or 200 basis points. I think my Admiral shares of total stock market at Vanguard are 5 basis points. So 200 versus 5. I mean,
no brainer.
What, a 40-to-1 ratio?
Right, exactly.
I'm not going to buy a loaf of bread for $40 if I can get it for $1.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention one other thing. You talked about the mobility. I do. To me, to move is very natural. Like you said, I traveled and I played basketball overseas and whatnot. And my wife likes to travel. We do all these road trips. We have a good time doing it. But I noticed having moved to this small town here in South Georgia now, my new town, people don't quite know what to make of me. They're like, "Why are you here?" and to me, it's an adventure. To me, they're kind of wondering, like, does this guy have a checkered past? No, I'm pretty normal. I am very tall, but and so. But I've always found if you're willing to move for opportunity, oh my gosh, there's opportunity in perpetuity.
Oh, yeah.
If you'll go, there are jobs.
Absolutely.
But people get so locked into a geographic area or a career path, they think there's no other option. Oh, there's always another option. It might not be in the county. It might not be in the state. But if you're willing to, pick up and go, you're going to get probably a better job than you have now.
Yep, absolutely. And the very act of leaving has been hugely rewarding for me personally, at least. In the Power of Quitting post I wrote about, every time I've left a job, luckily my job I can do from anywhere. So every time I've decided, all right, it's time to pick up and move, it's resulted in, remote working opportunities, wage increases that I would have never got had I stayed still. And it's just incredible. And then you got this whole nother place that has opportunities you've not even explored yet. So I'm right there with you. I'm envious of you. You do have one of those careers. Maybe I'll have to get my blogging career going for real. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And then, I did another geo-arbitrage little attempt I did. We all went last year to Mexico for 6 weeks. And we went to Cancun, and I figured Cancun would be very easy. First of all, I knew how beautiful the beaches are, and got down there, and it was beautiful. I mean, the infrastructure was much better, and I remembered it. Even the Mexicans told me, so you're going to notice there's a big change in the people toward tourism. They realize that tourism is very important here, and they're really happy to see you. It was just a very positive vibe. I enjoyed my time in Cancun. We got a 1-month rental in a little studio apartment, and I tracked all our expenses that month there, and we spent $1,550.
Nice.
3 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so what's that? A little less than $19,000 if you prorate that for the year. But I mean, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm a newbie.
Right, exactly.
Trying to score a place, and so if you have a frugal lifestyle, you can probably live anywhere in the world. But if you have frugal tendencies and you live in a low cost place to begin with, oh man, the combination, it's powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's having just spent a couple months in Southeast Asia, it was just I could not believe how low the cost of living was, and yet the quality of life was just so high.
Oh wow!
It was, but yeah, Mexico's on the top of my list of where I want to be heading next to check out because I've never been down there. So I'll be getting back in touch to get some recommendations off you later.
Don't hesitate.
Nice. So you. Just to recap a bit, $35,000 net worth pretty much. And then you build up over 100K in Saudi Arabia, and then you come back to Georgia, work for a few years, and then you make a move down to southern Georgia, and then you just really go into overdrive. So where to go after that?
Well, 2013, my wife and I took the year off, and we homeschooled for a year just so we'd have some flexibility and we could go visit relatives and, take trips to Jekyll Island and go camping and visit people in Florida. I mean, it was just so leisurely. I mean, when you have time, you feel wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
and
it doesn't cost that much.
No, and we're living in our house in the Grange, and our house is beautiful, and cooking and just very low cost existence, but high quality. I'm very big on using the library, and we don't have cable. We don't have a lot of ongoing expenses, but at the same time, I mean, there's no other way to say it. My life is awesome.
Right. Yeah.
And like I said, I'm older, so I'm from a generation where there were 3 channels on the TV. There was no remote control in the house. We didn't get cable till I went off to college. We didn't have, video game. So, I kind of look at these things that a lot of people see today as like they've always been here. To me, I just marvel at everything,
Right.
So we took 2013 off, and about that time, I guess our net worth was about, a little less than 800, with the market going up, and we don't take on any debt. And, But last year, we're kind of we're not quite where we want to be financially. We're sitting good. But we decided, look, we want to do this to kind of be a model for other people. And we decided, look, we're going to take 2 years, possibly 3 years, and really full throttle down on the savings, go over the 7-figure mark, and then I'll truly be, we'll be the millionaire educator.
Right.
And just slay the beast, be done with it. Not that that's the magical, 7 figures. It's not what it used to be, obviously, with inflation and whatnot, but it's a threshold. We just wanted to push through. And, we started here, in August of 2014, and that from August to December, we saved $46,000. We're after April, we've saved $35,000 more.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, I'm shooting to save $106,000 this year. And then whatever carries over to the remains of 2016, those 8 months, I'll, probably do at least $8,000 a month. So we'll say $65,000.
Wow. So you're still maxing out your 403B, your 457s for both of you. Do you have IRA, HSAs? I
have an HSA. I started that my last year down in Eccles County. I use Element. It used to be Eli Lilly Credit Union. They had a Ameritrade HSA with decent costs, and I can get to low-cost ETFs on Ameritrade platform. I think I was looking at like 8 basis points and $36 a year fee. And that was a problem, finding an HSA I can invest in.
Yeah. A lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, so but I think I found something that it's now called Elements Financial, I believe, or something to that effect, but you can find it on the internet. But yeah, we have 457, 403B, IRAs, HSA, and I also do an Ed savings account for my son. I've done every year since he was born. And that thing has grown tremendously too. So Those are my 5. And that's usually the order I fund them in. I try to blow out the 457 first because of the flexibility element. Then the 403B, because, that's more important than my 450, than my IRA. Excuse me. That's what I meant to say. And I can always use my IRA. I can fund that all the way to April the following year. The HSA is also very flexible. It goes to April the following year. And the Ed saving as well. So I always want to load up on that 457, then the 403B.
Nice. And do you do much taxable investing, or is it all in tax-advantage accounts?
This is where I'm a very terrible guest. I opened since my $100,000 from Saudi, I used that to buy a house, and I eventually converted that to IRAs and whatnot. Did a little switch. I have $1,000 that I opened up in a Vanguard account probably about 2 months ago. I just said I got to get the ball rolling on that. I am totally, for the most part, pre-tax.
Nice. Well, that's definitely what I focus on first. And I just actually last week finally set up automated investing for my taxable account, because that's the only thing. Like, I still hesitate and do stupid things that I know I shouldn't do, but I can't help it. So I finally bit the bullet and was like, all right, I'm just going to set up the automated thing and just let it keep pumping out of my account every month and be done with it. So, but yeah, focus for me as well is just all on those tax advantage accounts too.
Well, and I learned from your blog that I used to kind of think, well, am I crazy to do this? I look down the road. I am going to do some Roth conversion ladders. I want to do that.
You're also doing the 72T distributions, aren't you?
Yes. A lot of people are wondering, how do you live? Well, like I said, I do a 72T distribution.
Could you talk a little bit about that? Because nobody knows anyone that actually has done one, and it does look quite complicated. So would you mind just going into that a bit?
Yeah, and that's there is a 2T.net as a site I came across where they had a lot of information on that. And then, what it is, it's, substantial equal periodic payments, and 72T is the part of the IRS tax code, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And you said 72T.net? It broke up a bit there.
I think it's 72.net, I believe that's the site.
I'll look it out and put it in the show notes anyway, so.
Okay. And I kind of viewed this as a way to, I had these big IRA that I couldn't do anything with. Well, how do I, use it? Well, this provision allows for you to make your IRA, basically you annuitize it. You take a certain amount of payments out per year or per month, however you want to do it, but it's based on your life expectancy, and the IRS has an interest rate you use depending on when you start it. And I would look at that and it looks so complicated, and then I went to the IRS site and read about it, and I could take my financial calculator and put the numbers in they got and make them work.
Oh, nice.
So
right.
Once I figured out that, the fear went away, and I did it. And I remember when I showed my accountant, he looked at that and he's like, well, wait, why are you doing this? You're going to have to pay and I said, no, I explained it to him. And even a lot of times your CPAs aren't very familiar with this. And then we have filed since, and it's not been a problem, and he feels a little better about it. But yeah, it's nothing illegal. Mm-hmm. It's just not used often. If I were like an athlete with a lot of money, tucked in an account, and I blew all my money, I'm sure that's what a lot of athletes use to get current spending money of this provision, the 72T.
Right. Yeah. My plan is hopefully to do most of it in the Roth conversion ladder. So I hopefully have enough time to get it all converted potentially at low costs. But definitely can see why 72T would be a good choice. How has it been for you?
It's been good. We take about a little more than $18,000 a year between us from our accounts, and we'll have to take that every year.
Mm-hmm. How old are you? I didn't cover that yet, I don't think.
Oh yeah, I'm 51.
51, okay. So
yes.
And when did you start the 72T?
Make sure I'm telling you right. I believe I started it in 2013.
Oh, okay. So you got
plenty
of cash in there.
Yeah, 3 withdrawals from it, and I keep probably a little too much cash, like 4 years worth of cash, just in case there's a crazy market crash. Mm-hmm. And then I have all within that IRA itself. I have all dividends and capital gains paid to the cash automatically. So I know that's probably a lot of detail, but one of my big fears was, what if we have a real market and there I have to sell these stocks at the bottom to get because you cannot change your distributions. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that said, I like to keep 3 to 4 years worth of cash provisions within that IRA.
What else are you invested in? Because we haven't even touched on that yet. We've been so excited about the different accounts you're going into that. Where's your money invested?
The vast majority of my money is at Vanguard. My investment philosophy is very simple. I like low cost index funds. I'm partial to target retirement funds. For big chunks of my money, I think I'm paying 17 basis points. The allocation is set. It gets less risky the older I get. They take care of that adjustment as I get older. It's an underlying portfolio of index funds. It's like a financial advisor already built in it, in a sense.
Yeah, it's hard to beat.
Right. And for funds, I use life strategy funds, that same thing, except these aren't shooting for a retirement date. They're a set fixed allocation that, don't change. And for example, I believe they're along the same lines, about 17 basis points. And within Vanguard, I have chunk certain amounts, like total stock market at, 5 basis points. Mm-hmm. I think I've, and around the margins of my portfolio, I might rev it up with a little more international, some small cap. I've done that this past year. I went and optimized my IRA. I made sure all those accounts, like my REITs and whatnot, had at least $10,000 so I could get the lower fund cost. And, I kind of take Buffett's view that, I'm going to hold those forever. Let them just keep paying me.
Right, especially now that your 72T distributions could let you live in Cancun with your family is pretty good. You don't have to worry too much.
Because, it's 18, and I think, geez, 18 doesn't carry me very far here in the States at times, or a family, and I know what it did for me in Cancun. and, in addition to that 72T, bear in mind I have my 457 that I can pull from strategically. Right. So let's say, I need, instead of 18, I need 40 this year. And let me use the figure 43 because that's something I've written about on my blog. The figuring out your free money, your standard deduction.
I'm gonna link to that.
Yeah, that I thought it was when I added those up, I just couldn't believe these numbers. That the government lets me earn this amount of money before they want to tax me. What a country, what a deal.
It's amazing. Yeah. So
and then my 43 represents the free money, which is, standard deductions, personal exemptions for 3 people, my child credit added back in, and then the remainder of the 10% bracket. So like on $43,000, I pay $850 federal tax, which is a 1.9 effective tax rate federally.
Wow.
Yeah, and here's something I really got to say. People complain, they bitch and moan about taxes all day long, me included. But stop complaining. Do something about it.
Exactly. Yep.
The government allows for you to do this. It's not illegal. It's in the tax code, and it's encouraged because when you're older, you should be able to take care of yourself, ideally.
Right.
And that's why the government set it up.
It's amazing to me because people, they'll spend time watching like CNBC and trying to actually do research on individual companies and things, but then they're not even taking advantage of free 401k employer matching or any of the accounts or anything. And it's like, all right, you're trying to eke out an extra whatever 0.5% on the market, and you're risking so much when you're not even taking the free money on the table.
Well, I was looking at something the other day, and $100,000, and you save a whopping 20%, which is good. 20,000, and then you make 20% on that, and you invest in like Buffett, and just you make $4,000. Well, I'm just looking here at my sheet. I saved, for example, $91,000 in 2012. My wife and I.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, well, you can. Mr. Money Mustache wrote a great article on it. If you haven't read him, please, you've got some background reading to do, everybody. How do you phrase it? The power of savings, or it was a great article where he just basically showed Warren Buffett humbled because you can outsave what you can get on returns, and that's pretty much the strategy I have gone to here.
Yeah, but as Jim Collins from JL Collins and H says, he's like the savings rate will just erase so many of your little mistakes along the way that it doesn't really. You can get a lot of things wrong and yet still come out on top if you just save. Well,
I'm proof of that. I'm not always the sharpest pencil in the box, but I know how to set up my contributions to a 403B and a 457.
Right, and you went from, in 16 years, from age 35 to 51, from 0 to nearly $1 million between you two on two.
Right.
Right, that's just incredible.
And in that time, it was not a life of deprivation, of miserly penny pinching.
Right, exactly.
We took a 1-month trip to Brazil, and we've traveled. We go to the beach every summer, and we have a very nice life.
And let's focus a little on the income again, because you've done quite a bit throughout your career to increase your teachers' income. Obviously, you hear all the time in mainstream press that teachers are barely getting by, and yet here you guys are thriving completely in all manners of the word. So, so you said that Georgia itself was pretty good as far as relative wages for teachers, but can you talk a little bit about what else you did to help increase those wages throughout the years? Yeah.
Anyone's ever read The Millionaire Next Door, you know that late Dr. Stanley wrote about playing offense and playing defense. Well, teachers don't have a lot of ways to generate extra income, but there are ways. The biggest thing I noticed when I looked at the pay scale is that When I first started working, I had only a master's degree. I had 2 master's degrees. Well, if I got my next degree, a specialist degree, which is roughly 9 more courses, I would earn $6,000 more a year, $500 every year until I stopped teaching. And so I got into that program to become an administrator, not necessarily to be an administrator, but I knew I could basically study my way to a pay raise. And after a few courses, I told my wife, I said, honey, there's no one here that we work with that could not will themselves to this coursework. So that was her cue. She jumped in. And so we both did it. And so now, consequently, we get $1,000 more a month.
Wow.
Right, which... as I like to tell people, if you earn that $1,000, that's not beer money. That is IRA money, 403B money, and we have religiously parked that in our various accounts. Another thing I did, and I did all 7 years in LaGrange, and I was a little younger then, and I could do that. I could do this. What I would do is extended day. What that meant was that I did not have a planning period. I taught 4 out of 4 block classes for that meant an hour and a half for each class. I taught all that time with no break other than a 30-minute lunch break. And I'll be honest, that was very tiring, especially after 7 years of it, but it paid me 25% more.
25% more, wow.
On my base, yeah. And everybody would always say, well, geez, why do you do that? And I'm like, well, because it's 25% more.
Right, a 25% raise. That's pretty hard to come by.
Yeah, exactly. I always joke around, tell people, I'm turning academic tricks here. Just give me this one more class. But also I was an assistant basketball coach and assistant cross country coach, and I did things of that nature. My wife's been Technology Student Association leader and FBLA leader, for business clubs. And they have stipends. And, when you get those things, you make them, put them on your side of the ledger. They don't go to the tax man. They don't go to your state income tax. They go to your side of the ledger, your accounts.
Right.
And not that we're, I don't want to come across as like a hippie or, free. We live in a consumer society. People are conditioned to spend, and I'm a capitalist, but even now I look at it, it's like, when I see commercials and it's sell, buy, and it drives me crazy. And when you're talking to your coworkers and your friends and your relatives, a lot of times you get this like, wow, these people are strange vibe because we're doing something that's different, but. The numbers, they just jump off the page at me. It's like, wow, I wish more people would do this because, it's not about the money. And anybody that's saved any money, they'll be probably the first people to tell you that. It's the freedom and the choices that lead to exponentially, at least in my case, increased happiness.
Things you can't even think of or wouldn't have predicted before. Just, yeah, exactly. There's so much opportunity that just happens when you have the freedom to take it.
Like our discussions are like, when we stop teaching, we're probably driving, load up the car and go to Quebec, and I want to work on my French. I speak horrible French; it's been really bad. But I'd like to go to Quebec and just slaughter some French and work my way through it. And what better way,
Absolutely.
But most people. If you're tied down to a job, you can't even entertain this thought. I'm dying to go to Thailand. And I'm going to Brazil. But, and these things are going to happen, A lot of it thanks to you with all your travel hacking posts. I got tired of watching you have all the fun. And other guys like Brad over at Richmond Savers, wow, I've learned so much from you guys on that.
Nice, yeah, it's amazing what you can do. Absolutely amazing.
I'm a millionaire in that regard, as far as miles and hotel points. And,
nice.
And I've been doing it for a year.
That's crazy. Yeah, and those things will go so far, especially if you're talking to Brad about how to use them and things like that, and reading up on all the blogs. It's just absolutely incredible. When you have a little financial leeway, you can take the time off to go do these adventures. And, my son, he's 9 years old, and he talks every day about that trip to Cancun. And now he's asking, Dad, what are we doing next? Are we going to go to Texas,
Brazil or Puerto Rico.
Nice.
Because he's heard us tell our stories, and he's getting fired up. And, I love seeing that fire in his eye to travel and see the world.
That's so good. So yeah, talk a little bit about what do you, in addition to Quebec and maybe Cancun some more, what do you think, what does your post-fi life look like?
Well, more travel.
Mm-hmm.
I can see myself buy a small, manageable, what I would refer to as a crappy house in Florida, something that I get within proximity to the beach, bikeable to the library and the grocery store, preferably in Aldi's.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then taking, like I said, trips to various places, and I can see myself doing some slow travel, mm-hmm. 2 to maybe 3, even 6 months, depending on what we're going to be doing with our son. A lot of family visits. I'm from a big family, so is my wife. We've got lots of nephews and nieces. We like spending time with everyone. We're, a simple life, but also see a lot of adventure mixed in there. And that adventure will be frugal adventure, because just because you're overseas doesn't mean you got to spend every dime. I noticed in Cancun, when you're on the strip on the main beach, wow! I mean, the cost. If you don't spend all your money, you can do it in a couple of hours. But you don't have to fall prey to that trap. Just be like, find out where the locals go, and that's where all the real fun is anyway. We all know that.
Absolutely.
And so at this point, I'm envisioning fire as a little more travel, but my wife and I are the kind of people where we can entertain ourselves. I like to read. I like to work out, jog, things of that nature. A little more blogging. Eventually, I'm going to put this out there and try to shame myself into doing it. I've got this half-written book.
Nice.
The Millionaire Educator, How to Build Wealth on a Teacher's Salary.
Do it, yeah.
Oh, God, it's been like 4 years, so I forget what Churchill said about a book. At first, it's a mistress, and then it's a tormentor. And I just have this nagging voice in my head, you loser, write your book. Yeah, it's going to be fun. That's because I have fun already. I just, expect more of it. I will say this, and maybe other people have bumped up against this. My first year I took off from work. My wife took a job, and I had about 6 months off by myself. That was a little strange, being by myself when my wife went off to work and I took my son to school. I'd prefer to have the whole family together. Mm-hmm. But even that said, I worked on a lot of things. And I sure was in great shape. I had the best six-pack of my life at age 47, which was, shocking. I do a lot of self-experiments. I read Tim Ferriss, and I'm really into things like that,
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Any very successful ones?
Well, I started that slow-carb diet 6 years ago, and I lost 35 pounds in 10 weeks. And so now I experiment with ketogenic diets and intermittent fast. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm the human guinea pig, which makes me even weirder, to everybody. And of course, you can't shut me up. I love to talk about this stuff.
No, that's great. Usually I ask all my guests straight before we finish if there was one piece of advice that you had to choose to give someone starting on this path, what do you think it would be?
Well, I wrote a few things, but this one's overlooked. Is first, realize and internalize that financial independence is possible. It is doable. There are so many social narratives today about how bad it is, and I'm not saying everything's perfect, but I would imagine most of the people listening to this podcast or reading your blog, if they don't have a college degree, they're quite capable of getting one. And when you look at the unemployment rate for people with a college degree, it is single digit. And that doesn't mean you'll have an ideal job, but when you get that job, use that opportunity to grow your salary somehow, maybe start a business on the side. But you need to know that it is possible to become financially independent. And I think the easiest way to do that, and a lot of you guys have written about this, is that when you play offense, generate income, and you save it, and you learn to cultivate a low-cost, frugal lifestyle, which can be very awesome. It's almost foolproof. And this is what I wish I knew in my youth, and this is why I'm so envious of all you young 20, you 9-year-old retirees.
Yeah, I wish not quite.
I was clueless, and but that said, yeah, and that's the reason I just do right is that okay, you screwed up, you can't go. There's no such thing as time travel. We can't go back and fix it. If that's the case, learn the best way to get you where you want to be, and that's going to be generate some offense either through a job, save the heck out of that money, use those pre-tax accounts, and you can live really well. We live in a first world country. I mean, America is a great place to live. You can live great on $1,500, $2,000 a month, and I'm talking from a perspective of a family of 3. You take out my mortgage, I'm sure I could live on $2,000 a month for sure, probably $1,500. Mm-hmm. But you can do it. It's possible. Don't just stomp out all that negative energy about, this is the worst ever. No, in a lot of ways, it's some of the greatest times ever to live in.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it really is. There's actually a really funny Louis C.K. skit. He was just saying how just absolutely amazing everything is in the world these days, but all people can do is complain about it. So he's like, it's like the best stuff ever has been created, but it's all on the worst people because everybody's just so complaining about everything and just looking at the negatives, and yet it's just an incredible time to be alive.
Well, and I guess I need to say this. The way that we're set up in developed countries is that if you don't take care of business and set yourself up, you can set yourself up to be, these are strong terms, a debt slave, mm-hmm. a tax slave. The more you earn, the more you're going to pay if you're taking everything. And then all you'll do is complain about, I pay so much in taxes. Take control. I don't want to be beholden to people. I like my freedom, and I understand we got to pay taxes and things that, and sure, I go to the public library like all you guys, and I drive on the road. I do want to contribute, but if you don't set it up for you, someone else is setting you up. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I didn't mean to make it. That sounded good, didn't it?
That was really good. You should patent that.
Oh, yeah.
I'll quote you on it. That was really good. No, that's absolutely amazing story, Ed. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about it. And is there anything else you want to touch on, or anything I missed before we sign off here? And obviously, everyone can come and see you at millionaireeducator.com. Is there anywhere else that would be good to get in touch with you, or just go over there? millionaireeducator.com. I have an email sign-up list that I'm trying to work with still, and if I don't get back to you real quick, just bear with me. One last thing I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention someone who is a great inspiration. I think many people would like to read this book. Paul Terhorst, Terhorst, Cashing In on the American Dream. I refer to it as a dated yet timeless classic. The information, the how-to of how he retired early doesn't work anymore. He was getting 8% on CDs. Nice.
Yeah, so you're not going to get that. But, man, just the way he worked the problem, a lot of you would like that book. And I have to say, when I read that book, it was a thunderbolt. I knew I wanted to go overseas, but I always knew that I had to come back to earn a living. This guy got me thinking as how to, blend the overseas fund and fund it with my own money. So, I feel I have a debt of gratitude to him. I'm so glad he wrote that book because that was kind of my shove. And I just think a lot of people would like that book.
Perfect.
And I've just like to say also to all the guys who are writing all this great content out there, I want you to know I really appreciate it because you've made me think of things in a way I might not, and just keep cranking it out. That includes you.
Oh,
okay, Brandon?
Man, thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's an incredible. Every time I talk to someone new in this community, it's just I just am blown away every single time, just from so many different angles people are attacking it in, and so many different ideas. It's always so exciting to meet new people, and yeah, we're all really lucky to have such intelligent people to bounce ideas off of and get great ideas from. So I couldn't agree more. And Paul Terhorst, there's been at least a handful of people that have asked me to try to get him on the show. So that's so your recommendation of his book has prompted me to add that to the top of my list again and see if I can get in touch with him. Because I've only heard great things, and I've not actually read the book, but I will link to it on my show notes, and I will be trying to pick up a copy as well to see how good it actually is, and it sounds pretty amazing. So, yeah,
you'll enjoy it.
Excellent. Well, Ed, thank you so much again. MillionaireEducator.com. Go take a look, say hi. I'm going to link to some of my favorite articles of his, and yeah, it's just been an absolute pleasure. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on.
All right, take care. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my interview with Ed. It's really incredible what you can do when you really just put your mind to it. It's obvious that Ed and his wife made savings a priority, so they took every opportunity that came to them, and that's, I think, the key. You just have to put yourself in a position to get opportunities, and when you get them, you just have to take advantage. And Ed and his wife have definitely done that and really saved an impressive amount of money over the last 15 years. So hopefully you got a lot out of this interview. I know I did. But yeah, so thanks to Ed, and thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next time. Finance.